Islam mode. Yeah, so I want to catch this while I'm thinking about it. My father was born 1936. Harold Mackey Sr. was born 1950. I remember being in Florida, in Dade or Broward County, at a church. And the church elder was at the podium, the pulpit. And he looked kind of upset, perturbed. And he was talking to the whole congregation. And he was talking about how he was raised and he knows they were raised. Most of them knew each other. My father, he used to be all over the Keys, South Miami, Broward, and beyond. And he always around some people he knew. Lots and lots. He's Bahamian descent. We in South Florida, anybody know, they know. But my father was a lot more sociable than most people I know. Even Maurice Simonette, Michael the Black Man, what he said to me, not what I observed, but he told, himself, he learned a lot watching my father. And anybody knows about Maurice Simonette, Boss Man Entertainment, he's a very gregarious person. He knows how to move through social circles and schmooze and rub elbows and all that. But my father was very big on keeping up with family, friends, and associates. He could remember a lot up here. You could tell my father who one of your parents, just one of your parents, or one of your brothers or sisters that he knew. All it would take was one relative. And maybe he may need more because a lot of them were named after each other too, female and males, from generation to generation. One, maybe two. And once you told him that, he might not know you, but he'll start telling you about upwards to like 30, 40, 50 people in your family. And all you could do was just sit up and, yeah. And you don't even have to assist and all that. He knows it. And I met like 3 people who were like him in my lifetime, where you could talk about just about anybody in the family tree, bringing the name up, and they could cite who they married, how many people they married, and who their parents were, siblings, first, second, third cousin, all that kind of, they could really go in on that. My father was one of those. He went to the army at an early age, like I think 1 year before he was legally allowed to do, because he lied to them about his age. He wanted to go so bad. His father taught him how to box. He went to Fifth Street Gym, according to what he says, with the Dundee brothers. They ran Fifth Street Gym. He said he beat everybody in the gym that day. That was his first time going to where people are trained like by professionals and whatnot. And he also had a story about when they were very young, that some white men used to come pick the young black guys up and take them like to the rock pile and places like that. And according to what he says, they would make them fight. And they were very young, like 6 to 8, 9 years old, that type of thing. So back to the church that day. The man is very serious, somber. It's very quiet in church. It's a lot of people there, but it's quiet. And he's upset. Visibly, he's upset. He's not yelling and all that, but you can tell he's upset. When we were coming up, you respected your elders, or you paid dearly for that. Outside, not talking about actual child abuse, but the reprimanding of a child, the chastisement of a child was so stiff and stern. Many people argue that they were abused as a child. I beg to differ. There were too many cases of child abuse, but at the same time, a lot of times that was just instilling discipline that people need. A child is way too curious and inexperienced to trust the child to just obey from call and response, from spoken word. A child can really, really hurt themselves very, very badly by the curiosity, the temptation to just sample something, just let's try, The world is too fascinating and tempting to allow a child with the brain hasn't even developed fully to make good, strong, conscious decisions in best interest of the self. And a little pain now from the stinging of a paddle or whip or switch. You still have to go get switches. Young trees, young tree limbs or vines or whatever, or maybe both. They take about 4 or 5 or something and wrap them up, twist them up real tight and use that to whop up. Maybe a belt. And it'd be a long butt whipping. You might not be able to sit down, but all your bones in your body were fit. No fracture, no break, possibly no bleeding and stuff like that. Your organs in your body, they were, your brain still sitting in the cavity where it belongs, right? Cerebral spinal fluid and all that up there. You can see out both eyes, you can hear out both ears. You're alive, full life. Disobeying our elders, we could leave this earth plane at a very young age. They call them the terrible twos. A child is not really responsible for their own actions before 2. That's our responsibility, to constantly be looking out for that child. The matriarchy used to be more together. They were claned up, tribed up. No woman who was going through the gestation period or had just given live birth or had an infant or a toddler was left alone. No woman. No woman. Ever. The sisterhood was so strong that there would be wet nurses where a woman that can lactate would actually breastfeed the child if the mother had to go to sleep or was tired or whatever she had to do. Maybe tend to other children once she kind of come back and heal, and that child get to be like 6 months down the line, old, and 9, 10 months old, and a year old. Now the mother can be back, if she's not pregnant again, can be back with the other children. So they would juggle duties, right? Of not only of the newborn child or whatever, everything that a homemaker would do. And we lived closer to the land. We had the knowledge of the land, so women also went out to get herbs and fruit, fresh fruit, and out and about around the Bonneville or the mansion or whatever they had, house, whatever, in the area. Milk cows and all this kind of stuff was going on. So the child really needs to be obedient when they get to be like 2 years old, because the human mind at that age is very hungry for knowledge, even to its detriment. Therefore, those who are knowledgeable, the elders, we have to be that second brain for that child, which is the primary brain. We have to do the most thinking for that child. That child will try to ingest just about anything and swallow it and harm themselves. It's that bad. So one problem is that the child needs to be more independent once they get at that age, because they can slip away. And before you know, they've been gone too long out of any adult sight, they probably done got into something. So that behind whipping that we were getting, if we got those, intention is for the child to associate the do's and the don'ts. Disobedience with severe harm. Talking to the child, telling the child verbally wasn't enough. It'll go in one ear, right out the other. And it go right out into it and do it. Anyway, you have to have something to take the place of the lesson that they're going to learn when the infraction occurs, because that lesson could be fatal. That lesson could cause that child to be maimed forever. I had an incident with Asher Moran was in the lobby of Locking It Down Records. Miami Mac was in the office, that's his uncle, and his mother was there. And Asher Moran attempted to stick his finger that was just in his mouth, which means probably got saliva wet, into the wall socket. He was about to, roughly 2 years old. He tried to stick his finger in the wall socket. I'm the first one to see it and see what exactly he was doing. Nobody else was saying anything. I said, hey. And he put his finger back in his mouth, too, and looked like this. And he tried it again. And every time I say no, he'd jerk back, but then he'd try to do it. So now I see, well, this is a teaching moment. You know, he really needs to know that that's nothing to play with. Matter of fact, what would that be to him? That's not my brother, that's my nephew. His cousin. That's his first cousin. My sister's son, Tariq, bit down on a phone cord. I think he was with his daddy that time, and it knocked him across the room. Boom! Hit the wall. It could have killed him. So when I popped him on his wrist, his uncle and his mom was like, hey, why'd you have to hit him? All you had to do was talk to him. This was like the 5th, 6th time he tried to stick his finger in the wall socket. So that's just a little side note, because what's going on, what we're talking about, is the elder in the church. He was very upset, and he talked about how he was raised, and those who were younger but were adults and had their own children were raised. It's about the time cable television is becoming more popular. More people are being able to afford a TV, for one. A lot of people didn't even have a TV when they were growing up. I'm in Hollandale right now. My stepmother, she remembers a time when her father's television was the only television in the neighborhood. And they used to call it the idiot box. A lot of reverend pastors call it the idiot box. Right? The most honorable Elijah Muhammad said, one day we will invite the devil into our living rooms. He was talking about the television. Telling lies in the vision. Tell our vision. So that television, if you look in the 70s and the 80s especially, you will see, if you do the research, you can find articles about how much time is spent watching television, mindlessly allowing these images and these sounds to assail your senses constantly, even to the point you sleep with it on. And you had what they call couch potatoes. And a lot of times what was distracting people from getting up off the couch and doing something constructive with themselves, with their lives, with their families, with their community, was the television. Then you had the quality of content of programming started to go down after a certain time. It was a time they tried to have more morals, and we used to have Aesop fables when we were growing up. It was always a moral to the story, try to teach you to be a better person and this type of thing. Social interaction and self-accountability and all this kind of stuff. Aesop fables. You had Leave It to Beaver. Sometimes they have an aside, they have a set aside, and somebody, Wally or Beaver, somebody got to learn how to behave and how to treat other children nicely and all this. You had more wholesome things on TV, and those started to go down and become more what they call racy, trashy, filth, quote unquote. So it's about that time, late 70s, early 80s. And the music started to get more promiscuity, right? The racier lyrics, more, not still Luke Skywalker. He's still not, we don't have to put the parental advisory on the stickers yet. We ain't even got that far yet. But they would talk about, that ain't nothing but church. That ain't nothing but church. They need to come on back in the church, the singers. And they would call it secular music. And they would be harmonized just like in the church. But now it's about a male's prowess. How bad they need the male or the female in the bed with them to make love. So they were like, well, that should be devoted to Jesus Christ, right? And your love for God and all this kind of stuff. So we're going through that transitionary period, coming out of the 60s into the 70s, and out of the 70s into the 80s. And the lyrics got more and more blatant about what it was that the person wanted, more sensual in sound, and even the production, boom, 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 compared to the 60s, like doo-wop and other stuff they had going on back then with the rock and roll, rhythm and blues and all that. So it's still pretty old-fashioned in a lot of schools and homes and everywhere you can go. It was still hats off in the building. It was a time, you come in the building, hats off, everybody look at you like this, like you done took a few more steps in the door than most people. You take that hat off, wipe your feet at the door. There was a lot of things that were just norm. A younger person to walk in amongst people and not say good morning or good evening. Hi. Some people might let you say hello. Some people tell you don't say hello. Hell is low. We talking about back then. So now, the man made a point that they all, when he's saying we, it's a certain age and up. And at that point, that year, he was even talking to people young like me because they were being raised properly. when it comes to this, in this respect, the point he's about to make. So the elder talked about how skilled the so-called black man is, right? How did that come to be? It wasn't school. It was home. It was home training. It was the father, the grandparent, the great-grandparent, the uncles, the great-uncles. You know, you got to feed the matriarchy too, right? They tended to live longer back then because the Monsanto and all the GMO and all that, you know, you didn't have all this stuff that they doing. WHO, World Health Organization, from your primary care and them prescription drugs and big pharma to what they've done to the farms and all that, the dry goods, wholesale, dry goods, all that. They are perverting the food source as a part of that silent war, poisoning the food, weakening the nutritional value of the food on purpose, calling the population on purpose, right? Now, back then, they tended to be live longer, with their still wits about themselves, no grave disease and Alzheimer's and all this kind of stuff. Mind sharp as a whip, strong as an ox still. You're talking about somebody 70, 80, 90 years old. It just, when they pass, people surprised, like, wonder what really happened. You know, but nothing wrong with them. You know. So, he talks about how skilled, we're talking brick masonry, a real mason, brick and mortar buildings that you put an address on, quote unquote address. Now, engineering, I spoke about on a recent post how, for example, Florida was largely like the Everglades are now. So the engineers had to make, first of all, level land. It's a rainforest-like type of climate, tropical-like type of climate. So they knew they would have to have land that was self-draining. So when the rains come and the high tide and all that, the water would go away and you could walk on dry and not have a lot of puddles and rivers and all this kind of stuff. So they had to engineer the ground that would become parking lots, sidewalks, pathways, and the foundation with a foundation in the foot of a building, in the basement of the building, the first floor of the building and all that. They had to engineer the ground so that it would be that way. And you could also have like basement areas, right? They had to engineer it a certain way. They had to foresee everything that we see now in urban, suburban, and even rural America, where you can drive a vehicle, motor conveyance, and you would have a house on a hill and stuff like that, ranch and pasture land and all this. They had to engineer that. It's not like some places where you just, okay, here's some land and we'll build right here, we put the cows over there. It wasn't that simple. They had to do something about the thicket, about the sticks, about the swamp first. If you ever been to a swamp, it's quite dangerous to do it, but if you just went to a swamp, just imagine you building houses, you know, gas station, stuff like that, mall and all that. Just go to a swamp, a real swamp. Imagine what it would take. What goes into engineering that area? I want to say the word. I ain't gonna try to say the word. I might say it wrong. I'm not quite sure if I'm saying it right. But waterways are very complex, natural waterway. You had the ocean, sea, you had the bays, inlets, vistera. I was trying to say that word. I forgot how to say it. And I was just looking at the map of New York, so they got some of that. But you got the harbors, you got the bays, you got streams, you got creeks, you got rivers, you got lakes, ponds, swamps. You got all this different stuff. And some of them are interconnected. In some kind of way, they go from salt to fresh water. Now, you got high tide and low tide. Yeah, I was just looking at which direction does the Hudson River flow? Which direction does the East River flow? And that for example, it got complicated. I was saying, I said, might be, sometimes be complicated, but this one might just be, might flow south, might flow north. Well, let's see. It's complicated, right? It's a lot of factors that determine which direction the current will flow. So this is science. This is a high science that these men, average man, that stereotypically, if you is caught up in the media, the news media, cartoons, television programming, that type of thing, stereotypically, they are nowhere near the actual men that actually surround us even right now to this day that are still alive. You got ones young like my age and younger, of course, but I would argue that we don't hold a candle to the guys born in the 1800s and the early 1900s. I will argue that. Somebody got to show me different. I will argue we don't hold a candle to them. So you talking about the octopuses, the guys who, these men, first of all, a lot of work they did was manual. So they would have work camps. Local 1416 ILA, for instance, they used to have the banana boats. So before you had forklifts and things like that, they had to have work camps where they would bust their back to unload and load cargo on the ships. Mind you, if it's with the ship, the smaller vessels, they kind of rock. The boat rock. Imagine that. You don't even have good footing. And you got to haul and carry on, drag. Oh my God. Whew. So, these guys had to be physically strong, but then they had to be mentally sharp. Because while you're doing this physical work, you got to be thinking. And a lot of times you got to think on your feet because you got this work camp that will follow direction, but one mistake in reading a blueprint or the architect's design and all this kind of stuff, and these guys gonna do exactly what you say, before you know it, you gotta undo a whole job over. It might have taken X amount of days or weeks, and now it's gonna take about that much to undo it. Then you gotta go back and do it again. That's if you make a mistake. So these guys are carpenters, masons, brick masons, electricians, of course. You got the glass works for the glass panes and all that kind of stuff. You got the ironworks, the blacksmith for the gates and things, the locking mechanisms, locksmith. You got so much going on. The roofing, the walls and things in the house, and the floors and stairs, and and they learn it all. These days, a lot of times in a particular locality, you might have one commercial person specializing in like cabinetry or something, lighting or something. But back then you had too many people who knew exactly what to do. And this was home training. The village, the community, just growing up. Sometimes you might get roused out of your sleep. Come on, get your clothes or get ready. You going over your uncle's house, to do that. And okay. And there you go, 6 years old, 9, 15 or something. Just shut. So now, it started the war on drugs and the tough on crime. And according to the legislature, they say an opinion poll was that the majority, you had the Democrat state, the Republican state, blase, squaze, all that freaking frack they talk. They say the majority of voters and taxpayers were now complaining that criminals were committing this crime on the streets, not working, not paying taxes, and stealing and robbing, and then they can go now to jail and come out with a college degree in 6 years or 2 or 3 degrees. They were like, no, that's not fair to the people, the law-abiding citizens. This was the rhetoric. So in the institutions, they took out a lot of the trades. You can't hardly learn a trade to get a degree, and a college and degree. And degree, it was academic too. You get academic degrees, right? Philosophy, whatever, that type of thing. Medicine, right? They took all that out. But they sold the populace on the idea of the penal system, saying this was correction. They still say now, corrective behavior, to correct the behavior, the errant behavior of the delinquent and blase squad, right? So since he won't do it out here, he has too many distractions. We're gonna sit him down in the penal institution and make this person become a productive member of society. Right? They have to pass certain courses and da-da-da. Or you're going to do the maximum of your time and blah, blah, blah. Now, they took that out. And not only did they take that out, they started to force you to do maximum time. And there are many different legalese that they use to that results in max time. Down the line, they started taking gain time. Gain time means if I get a day, if I do good behavior, I can do like 1/10 of a day, 1/4 of a day, 2/4 of a day, 3/4, like that. To put it in a nutshell, gain time. They start saying you get less gain time now. And that was done in the 90s. Soon in the 90s in Florida, they're going to have this habitual violent offender, and then you have habitual offender. This is really bad because you had guys who were coming to the jail since the 20s, 30s, early 1900s, right? Because that was started, this system we have in U.S. in its territories, right, started, it was the Indian Removal Act, like type of time period, what they call it, it was Indian something, and then it became the slave catcher thing. And you had the Emancipation Proclamation that didn't truly free the captives, in our talkingness to this landmass. It comes from that. They start having loitering laws about loitering. That's some of the first things they did when they manumitted Emancipation Proclamation. Emancipate is not free. They manumitted, which means I think they like transferred them over to the state property or something like that in actuality, while telling us we were free, but we weren't. So they start coming around, not on their legal books, right? They really didn't do that. So they start coming around rounding us up because we were free from the plantation, but we didn't have anywhere. They didn't give us anything. And the Freedmen's Bureau, they dropped the ball. 40 acres and a mule, they dropped the ball. They killed Abraham Lincoln, assassinated him. So now, that's where the penal system comes from. That's why it's large black first and brown. They'll put an Asian in there before they put an Albayan. But if you pull white trash, which you probably even passing for white anyway, probably the lineage is breaking that one drop rule anyway, so poor white trash, and poor white trash also a lot of times they tend to not be homosexual, where a lot of this contracting is based on homosexuality. That goes back to the beginning of Wall Street. A likely Negro, quote unquote, is one who probably would likely, bend and give concessions on a homosexual basis. So the advertisement, a likely Negro, is telling these buyers of human chattel that this particular one probably would be a good bedmate if you are into that, or you could hold them and advertise them as that and sell them after you buy them from Wall Street as a male whore to a homosexual master or owner that will purchase that likely Negro and likely to do other chores and whatnot and not give you a problem. What we call jeffing, riding the clock, all this kind of stuff people do when they're not wholeheartedly working for the superior, or the supervisor, whatever. So now, this is where this is coming from. So we see that it morphed from that all the way up to now they're talking this talk about criminal. Menace to society, like Minister Louis Farrakhan talked about. Who is menace number one? How am I a criminal if I'm taking back what's been stolen from me through genocide and murder and assassination, fraud, lots of fraud, that this phony de facto government and those citizens that support the system and the status quo antebellum. Now, the elders in the church, and he said this very church we are in was built by our hands. He could name the actual ones, that most of the ones that actually built it too, whether they were still alive or not, whether they transitioned or not. And he started to kind of look around. I don't remember exactly where my father was sitting. I just felt like he looked at him too. Because the look he gave was that look when he looking at the one he really talking to. But see, adult elders back then, around children, they would respect the parents of the children. No matter how much of a nincompoop and numbskull and all the stuff they knew, because they knew the chain of command needed to go down, and the parents were doing a fairly decent job. And they don't want to add to the delinquency of that minor by saying stuff, because the minor will hear that and go and sass their daddy, their mama. Bitch, you ain't, nigga, you ain't, and get messed up. Even the old ones who said that. So to help not have to do that, they wouldn't say certain things around you. Right. Most I heard, Jimmy, you know you need to do something with them boys. Stuff like that. That's about it. And then they roll their eyes. Nigga still ain't shit. For real. And that's serious. Because, especially back then, you didn't have to worry about no police, no white man. One of them black men gonna get in your butt. But they know that your daddy is the problem. Your mama, whoever else around you. Right? That's the problem. But you old enough to know better, so they gonna still get in your butt. But they know, yeah, and you hear sometimes you might catch that conversation. It's the way they say the name of the parent. They might say a little more. Because you did have those who weren't wrapped so tight, so prim and proper and all, so they would kind of like be more relaxed as you get down from that type of person I'm trying to describe. For lack of a better term, I can't even come up with it. I got to think about that for a while, the term to call these type of people They were very well raised, very well mannered, very scrupulous people and stuff like that. Like, so many good things you could say about these type of people, man. They were model citizens, man. So you had the slum type, you had that type. But the ones my father would bring us around, we was somewhere, I think it was a holiday at that time. It was a horseshoe design apartments. It might have been a hotel conversion apartment. And we was right in the enclosure in the courtyard. And they said something, and it was coming from the car to inside somebody's house, been going to somebody's apartment. They said, and they were laughing about my dad, about they knew how he used to be. He's a family man now. He was a nation Muslim now that day, right? But they know how he was coming up. And they were like, you don't say nothing around your children. Hey, my dad just smiled, he's just cheesy, and they ain't say nothing. So, and I noticed my parents would always keep me around good people. I wouldn't say quote unquote. These, far as I know, man, these was some good people. I mean, I just made a post recently in a Facebook group about 99.99% of the homes I went into were immaculate. Even if they had like basic stuff in it, it was clean, very clean and neat. And you walk in, if you smell something, probably some food cooking. After a while, when that cooked food, when the aroma of that, when they put that food away and all that, you don't smell nothing in the house. Ain't no funk in there. And what you see is spotless. A lot of times they have little rules for the guests. Maybe a guest towel you don't touch, and sometimes the towel you can dry your hand on that towel. Wipe the seat, if you make a little mess. Some of them say, well, if you leave in a toilet bowl, that's the Ajax right there, or ammonia, whatever, in the brush, all that, boom. Some of them might have you do that behind yourself too. Some of them insist you not do anything but wash your hands. Just make sure you wash your hands, right? Things like that. So most places I went, man, people were well behaved, well raised. It was very peaceful. Even with the children, they keep the volume down to a level or below. You can play. You can't get crazy, loud, and too rough, bumping walls, knocking holes in one. Nah. So most environments were pretty much like that. And a lot of them were military, not all, but a lot of them were military. Somebody, at least one person in the household, had been to the U.S. military complex. But back then, you didn't have to do that to have this discipline type of person, but they were among those, right? My father loved that. That's what it is. And so what he called himself was trying to instill in us a love for it like he had, because he really truly, I believe he really truly wanted us to go. He never told us to go. But he always would say, I went to the Homey. I was stationed in Germany. So it's like, if you're not giving us skills, like I say, he didn't even teach us how to box. That was his primary profession by the time we came on. He had side hustles. Him and Brother Cash had a barber shop. And matter of fact, him and Brother Cash had a lot of stuff. They had a gas station, they had real estate, they had land all the way up to the old age. And he also did business with other people. Lots of other people. Luther B. Taylor, a lot of people. Brother Isaiah, I'm not sure what Brother Isaiah's last name is. The Marbury clan. Wise God, Father. May Allah be pleased with life service. So, the man talked about that. I never forget it. And I'm at a young age. I'm a straight A student. And I assume, because I heard this before around town, I done heard it a lot of times. I heard this stuff, what he's saying. I'm a nation Muslim too. I'm born in a nation. They always talk about that. So I'm just thinking, well, maybe I'm a small person in stature for my age, and I'm very studious. Maybe he kind of like one of them parents, probably W.E.B. Du Bois type, want me to go be a lawyer, doctor, something like that. One. And also, as stoic as my father was and tough as nails, I figure he gonna put it on my behind soon. Soon, so just relax and enjoy right now, because soon you will be doing it, where you get blisters on your hand, calluses on your hand, corns on your foot. So just, I'm thinking it's probably coming. But that time never came. That time never came. So I remember the frustration of being now, like, shoot, even in the 5th and 6th grade, but definitely 9th, 10th. And I can't remember the name of it, but the places we had to go to get wood shop and welding class, it was always, first of all, it's late. And you got stuff like, okay, you got to get a grade and all this. And it's different when you're learning from the Frederick T. Gates, John D. Rockefeller. So a lot of times you have people being antagonistic, masking it as if they're trying to help you and educate you and raise your grade. But sometimes they kind of abusing the situation of being antagonistic. Because I know from experience, the little I got, landscaping, I took to it like a fish to water. It was nothing you could show me hardly. Some of that stuff get kind of tedious and kind of difficult, but nothing you could show me hardly that I couldn't do. And now you can turn your back on me. And if you told me everything I need to know now, you come back, if you told me something, you didn't tell me something crucial, which a lot of times they would do that, well, I don't know that. Sometimes Peter can come back. Prime it. You got to prime it. Well, shit, you didn't tell me. 2-cycle lawyer. You didn't tell me that. That shit. God damn it. I used to get mad as hell because, first of all, I don't like people talking to me any old kind of way. And I used to be very particular about being obedient to cut that shit down. So you could talk to us like that, because amongst us, a lot of misfits and all that. The youth and whatnot. And any old fool. But when it come down to singling me out, I had it so that most of the adults would single me out to point out what the other one should be doing. The slackers, the slow, the scraggle, whatever. I had it like that. By listening, ear, silent tongue. Wholehearted, I'm in their mouth. If we got a raise your hand rule, I wait politely till she respond and call my name and say, now I can ask my question. If we got pen, I'll take a note. Cause number one, you ain't finna be in my face talking to me like that. And I ain't finna go home and get my ass whipped by 30,000 people because I probably did some of your motherfucking ass in that classroom. Right? Me personally, I love my people. So I never was really like that with grandparents and uncles and aunts and, people, cousins, big brother and all that. I loved them. So I was like willfully obedient. I never was like, do something. I wasn't like that. So I was like, really wanted to please them. I really wanted to, you say make them proud, but please them, be obedient. And a lot of times that helped us have a good day, the children, And then we had special days. Like in school, you had special days. But when you had too much misfit stuff going on throughout the week, we noticed that the time between those special days began to extend because we're not earning the right for those. We don't act, as a collective, we're not acting right. So I alienated pretty much, even though most of them used to be around me because I was like best of both worlds. So I would speak Ebonics to my woes, low, real low. Like we talking about mumble rap, I was talking about that last post. We talked like that, we was jits. Had to talk like that. Yeah, no, shit. Looking at the teacher. Hold on. She turned away to the rest of the class. Saying something. Sometimes we licking our lip, wiping, just looking that way. We still talking. Right? And stop. A lot of time I had to stop first and just egg. Now, and I got to egg them because they overdoing it. Got my parents looking at my paper now. Fucking up. Everything you know. Charles, whoever they is. Derek. That whole name. When they call the whole name, I know they get in too much trouble. They be in too much shit. That shit go talking and the mother going through it. Sometimes they like that attention. They be liking that teacher. We had some real pretty teachers when we were young. Second, third, fourth, fifth grade. We had some real pretty teachers, man, fine. I ain't want that type of attention. I'm doing my work. So the teacher a lot of times didn't know. So I got excellent conduct, like perfect or near perfect attendance. And straight A, probably some B's here and there. I can get a C sometime, right? But overall, they got to give me that A plus because majority of the time it was an A or a high B. So, yeah. I'm just knowing I'm going to start getting these skills because I'm also economics. It's very key, man. This is some real stuff. I'm born in 73. I'm being raised by people born in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So we hearing these stories about how much a penny could buy, how much a nickel could buy. We talking grocery shopping. When $100, $50, $20 were worth so much. It had so much buying power. Right? When a $2 hole wasn't nothing to look down on. $2 was a lot of money. Right? Now, I picked up on most of my business acumen as a child. Listen to these people talk. When they gave me that phony charge, it messed up a lot of that because as a felon, now I gotta go to another party. Go to the auction with this other person. And this other person has to be the one because last I checked, as a felon, I couldn't get an auction license. You know, it's just so much that first felony did. At a crucial, right about that time, I'm about to start doing these things because I was behind the scene doing other things to get me to the point I can go to the auction. What's the other one? Well, the auction is, because we talking about food, clothing, shelter. Right to bear arms, because you got to protect food, clothing, shelter, and land. So when you start getting livestock, you get livestock, that's like a tax write-off too. If anybody didn't know that, look into that. You have livestock, that helps you around tax time, right? And certain other little things like that. It helps. Now, livestock, people will actually come and steal your horses from you. The rustlers, you know, and whatnot. They'll come steal your pigs, your horses, your cows. You know, you think it's probably a wolf or something at first before you find, and you start seeing little signs of, you know, human injury. You know, they'll do something to your little dog. You got a little shepherd dog or something. Do something to your dog. They might steal a dog. Right? So you need the right to bear arms. And then you got like bears, cougars, encounters. You know, it might be a big old crocodile or something, you know. And, you know, got to deal with, right? They'll come all up and they'll come in the house. Not just to the yard, they come in the house, smell that food, all them scents and stuff in there. So that's what you mainly need: food, clothing, and shelter. So when we was coming up, especially going more affluent areas, you can go in Goodwill and Salvation Army, stuff looked like it just came out. And matter of fact, a lot of brands back then, quality brands, the items, they lasted longer. The materials they were made out of, they lasted for decades. You had a lot of stuff that would bequeathed for generations, like a wedding dress. You could have a woman get married in the same dress her great-great-great-great-grandmother got married in. The thing was just that much quality. And the material, a lot of stuff was made in America, too. Before that outsourcing of American-based corporations that we built, even before a lot of the unions, we built them, got them rich. They outsourced to the sweatshops and whatnot, and largely Asia, made in Taiwan, made in Korea, made in Vietnam, made in Japan, made in China, made in, I almost said it, Singapore. Shoddy, shitty, a product that you would have to buy 30 times in your lifetime. An iron to iron clothes. We used to have a cast iron like type of thing you just put on heat. It was all metal. Iron or something. I think that's why they call it. I think it was iron. That's why they call it. I don't think it was steel. You have a cloth or something on, you pick it up. You might have that starch and stuff like that, the old-fashioned starch for the clothes. You iron like that. But that iron, it didn't run off electricity. It didn't run off the grid. So that iron, as long as you had fire, you had iron. No electric bill. You gonna burn fire anyway if you to cook or to heat the home. So you got a lot of products right now that they took or they bought, but they still sitting on the shelf because it doesn't go with the programming that they have now. The system of exploiting your pockets, keeping you broke, in the business of keeping a bitch broke. Godzilla pimping, right? Where you constantly buying the same item over it, a belt, a wallet, over and over and over again because it really doesn't work. A pair of shoes, they're not made to last a day. So, and they mad now they can't sneak in the country and steal all the jobs and not pay taxes like we have to pay because we're under threat, duress, and coercion, and they can't come and commit all this crime that Officer William behind Metro Dade Nitro can go put on Jamil Mack and the people like me. They mad. We sitting here ain't saying shit because it's round and they ass up and shipping mother ass up. I mean, go back over there and make some more cheap ass shit to sit over. So the elder in the church made a point. Dang near everything you see was not only built by the hands of so-called Black American people. A lot of stuff you see was invented by so-called Black American. U.S. The Northgate Midgard, not the Yucatan, not so-called South America, not Alaska, but somewhere with a good old 52 state flying, Old Glory flapping, the Aberdeen flag flapping, the Dixie flag flying, you understand? And we have been marginalized, disenfranchised, and some other word rhyme with that all this time. So by the time I'm about 15, 16 and all that, I done got a grind. I done got some motion of my own. My parents, they provided what we needed, but definitely not what we wanted. I used to see my sister, my mother's daughter, and Mac. They used to have to hound my mama every time we coming out of what summer, the fall quarter coming in, all the season, all the 4 seasons, but especially while in school. Cause boy, look at here, hey, I found out, yeah, boy, Now. They went to Columbia. Mac graduated from Edison. He a Red Raider alumni graduation, but he went to Columbia. My sister went to Columbia. That was Chris Tucker, the comedian. Now, I done said it quite a few times, man, Chris Tucker was not the funniest person in Columbia, nowhere near. He one of them. He was one of the most famous ones. He was always getting in trouble, always disruptive, and always saying something for they laughing. But boy, if you know, you know. But Columbia High, I don't know why, because there's a lot of funny guys in Atlanta and Decatur actually were. They call it Black Man Heaven. So a lot of, segregated black areas that never fully desegregated after desegregation, they were doing a lot better than a lot of people from a lot of other places, except for probably like Maryland, possibly Louisiana. And in Maryland, yeah, I think it's Maryland. But, and this is what people say. I haven't traveled enough to know, to compare and contrast, but people say that. And you say, nigga from the South and black man from the South, they spoiled. All that. Anyway, they would talk about your butt. They notice every little thing about you. Certain things you can't do nothing about. The way you were born to the world, your phenotype, your body structure and all that. You can't do nothing about that. You can't change that. Right. Everybody wasn't doing cosmetic surgery back then like they doing now, They got somebody out there made their bones longer. They were like had dwarfism or something. They went through an excruciating process to make the bones longer. Don't let them find out, boy. They talk about you. I already hear some stuff. They say, but y'all just don't know. I'm a fool with it, y'all. Y'all just don't know. I have consideration for people's feelings. I'm an empath. I remember a time when we had the old food stamp book. My mom was a proud type. I never know the time she was on food. She probably was before, but I can't remember my mom being on food stamp. She wouldn't even let me get free lunch in school. Now, I remember being in the line in the grocery store and feeling so bad when a lady pulled out a book of food stamps. It might as well be my mama, right? And I'm standing right there. Everybody know we on food stamps, right? We poor. So I know most stuff I think about, I would never say out loud. I come up some of the worst things you can say about a person or a situation. Cause Columbia High, places like that, Tony Elementary, Columbia Elementary, Kelly Lake Elementary, right? Sister Cloud Muhammad School. That's the majority of them, right? Muhammad University of Islam. My mom used to teach that when I was very young. I heard some people say some stuff, man. So Columbia High School is very, very well known for that. And my sister and my brother used to be so serious about it. I, on the other hand, I'm younger. So what I would do, I would never ask for nothing. I remember my grandmama, the only thing my parents would tell her, don't get us that for Christmas. We don't celebrate Christmas. We Muslim. Right? Pagan holiday. My daddy. Pork, no hog. Christmas time come around. Christmas. So, they say you're not supposed to mob people. That's how he sound. He sound kind of like that. So, what my grandmother would do, she would give me some new socks. Sometimes I would need new underwear. Some kind of way is a hole to whoa. I used to run a lot. I used to run. So I guess the friction on my leg going like this ran holes in my underwear, right? And my socks had holes in them. My shoes even would have holes and start talking. Where the seam is coming away from the sole, the stitch coming from the sole. And I would never say when the tread wear down, you really supposed to say so. But I think they used to make them better too, is what it is. So that even when the tread wearing down, you still got that traction. You won't be slipping in jack. Cause I used to do a lot of stuff, like fighting stuff and running stuff. So it must be what it was. They made a lot of products better back then. We talking this the 70s. Right, 5, 6, 7 years old. Then we come in the early 80s, 8, 9, right, 7, 8, 9, something like that. So now, they were so serious about it. I mean, they was like labor pain. I said like labor. I'm telling you that it was the look on her face like, please don't send me to school with this shit. I saying shit from last. And she take good care of clothes too. But she does not want a wardrobe that she had. Well, it's getting cool, so it's gonna have to be from last winter and fall. You can't. It was seasonal up there. We up the road in Atlanta, in Decatur, Georgia. Where fall is fall. The temperature does fall. It's fall. That motherfucker. It's about winter. When fall come in, whew, oh shit. We just had a hot summer in August. September, I ain't looked at the temperature lately up there. But September, man, boy, look at here. So they were so serious. And they be following her around the house. Mama still, I don't have it. No, you got clothes in the closet. And mama didn't know how much trouble she would get herself in. They looking at my ninja, but I ain't going back to school like that. I forgot the name of the elementary they went to. I can't remember. I don't remember. I guess we went to some of the same elementary. I don't even remember, man. Because I hardly seen them in the schools when I was in elementary. Between classes and all that kind of stuff. I don't remember where they were going when I was going to mine. I know they didn't go to City Club Homey at all. Right? That's why I first learned to read and write Arabic, wrote my name in Arabic and all this kind of stuff. I was bad to have that. I learned all that back then. And stopped studying and forgot it. And had to relearn that stuff. So we would talk about each other bad. But I didn't get into that. I didn't like that. I didn't like to talk bad about people. If I ain't got these teachers, if you ain't got nothing good to say, don't have nothing to say at all. But if some stuff was funny, but if they talking down on a person real bad, I try my best not to laugh. Because it's kind of like bullying. When the person is really, you can tell the person feeling really hurt. Sometimes they might cry or something like that, real sad. And I didn't want to have nothing to do with that. But sometimes the guys and the girl was so funny. They used to have teachers in the hallway laughing at other teachers in Columbia High School. I mean tears, they on the ground, can't breathe, laughing. The guys were just that funny. You couldn't help. If you can hear, you gonna laugh. And so, I got to an age where, I felt like I deserved and I needed to, because, now we at the age, the male start producing sperm like 12 years old, right? And you realize, I'm backed up. I'm a virgin, and you got pre-seminal fluid, pre-ejaculatory fluid just oozing out. And thanks somebody did something in my sleep, I caught the cloud. So that's you backed up. You don't know when you start producing sperm, but now it's just produce so much you backed up, right? Leaking all of your underoos and whatnot, right? So they taught us in school, it don't take but a fraction of a microscopic amount of that, and that's conception, you a father now. So I'm like, nah, man, I never had a time where I could take care of myself as a bachelor. And I gotta be one of these broke dads around here. And the way they raised me, I'm looking, what, deadbeat bad dad? Shoot, I'm gonna have to jump on, what they call it, fast food and stuff like that. I ain't got no skill, because by the time I got 14, 15, 16, you had to have a skill, and they were talking about certified. You had grown men had to go to school to get a piece of paper, and they were better than the whole entire staff board of how you say, the teachers and the administration, faculty and staff, that's how they said it. You had grown men old enough to be their fathers and grandfathers had to go get a piece of paper. A lot of them couldn't hardly read and stuff. These are the things they did to disrupt us and slow us down, like Jim Crow-like tactics. So we coming out of Jim Crow into desegregation and assimilation and all that. You had these old fines and rules and fees and stuff they coming up with to cover up the fact this just an attack on the poor, especially the black. So you had people run circles around them crackers. Cracker whole foreman, Ron Bergeron like type of position. Don't know his behind from a hole in the ground when it come down to how to really get stuff done. All he know is talk to an architect, a land surveyor, and found some land or inherited some land, whatever, and tell him what he want in general terms. The specifics, they had to lead to a lot of them was largely black, brown, and so-called poor white trash. And a lot of them were passing. For real, according to the one-drop rule. Because it was time when government was government and it was de jure, we didn't make that differentiation on skin color. It was with the Albayan, the experimentation, the Yakubian experiment, that took time. They collectively were a baby project. Just as a baby takes time, you don't put all type of responsibility on a 1-month-old, 5-month-old, 3-year-old. Same thing with that species of hybrid, especially the males. It took time before they could take dictation, take notes, apply what they learn, absorb information, process information, assimilate information. It took time. It took quite some time. So we couldn't put certain burdens on them. They were only good for certain things for a long time. Until they came more of a humanoid, quote unquote. And they say, our scholars say that the women, the female, were the first to become more like an original woman. The male took longer to become more like the original man. It took a longer time. That's why when they talk about the nobles taking the hybrids into their bedchambers, and the product of that matrimony automatically became a noble themselves, born into nobility, because a lot of the women didn't want to deal with even the hybrid women didn't want to deal with, because they looked quote unquote grotesque, like hunchback, Bigfoot, all this kind of stuff, right? They just didn't take on that human form fast enough. And nobody really wanted them like that. Sexually. Female. And we didn't have that rampant homosexuality, not from my studies, my research. We didn't have that rampant homosexuality except for the Roman, Greco-Roman culture. And most other places outside of Greece and Rome, if it was even called that at that time. But out of Greco-Roman, they weren't, a lot of them weren't like that from my studies, and many places even had laws against that with severe penalties. That's from my studies and my research. They always stealing my stuff some kind of way. Always separating me from my books and my paperwork, stuff I published, produced, my intellectual properties. And some stuff I did publish, like the Southern Affiliate album, and that was actually published officially, right? But I have intellectual properties, and somebody was always there separating me from that, whether it was the phony charges, largely that's what it was. And then you had other little tactics that they used to sabotage. The agent provocateurs didn't get too far with me. I'm not a push button for the most part. But the agent saboteurs, the gremlins, now they did that. Sabotage. So I started that post to say what I did say. And I still have some more to say, but at least I got that much. So yeah, the primary thing is about that elder made that point about skills, right? Skill set, trades, carpentry, masonry, that type of thing. Where you can't be a king, you can't be an emperor and all that. You don't have an edifice, a roof over your head. You don't have clothes, you butt naked, no clothes on your back. You don't have food that has been prepared for a man, woman, and child. You talking about no squirrel, and hippopotamus. You cook food, right? You want to juice food. You want to take the seed, extract this and extract that, prepared in such a way where it's nice, gourmet even, but also healthy. So food, clothing, and shelter, that's primary. All that class status and all that class status and social status based on wealth and what you own, that's not even wealth, that's stolen property. Receiving stolen property, that's really what's happening. Motu proprio, Pope Francis to all the heads of corporate war nation states and whatnot, right? Laid that fact down, admitted that fact, sounding like somebody coming out of Noble Drew Ali, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, MOORS Scientific. That motu proprio. I'm gonna wrap this up. Allahu Akbar. Fajr is in. I'm out.